At Elevate One Consulting, we specialize in executive, business, and accountability coaching tailored just for you. Discover the power of enhanced leadership skills, improved performance, and increased self-awareness. Our expert coaches will help you navigate challenges, articulate your vision, and establish a work-life balance. With Elevate One Consulting, you get proven methodologies to drive growth and success, insightful feedback and personalized strategies, clear goals, and actionable plans. Whether you're a C-suite executive, business owner, or entrepreneur, our coaching programs are designed to help you thrive. Visit www.elevateoneconsulting.com and take your first steps towards a focused future. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Are you a leader feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders? Register for the virtual workshop series Trauma in the C-Suite featuring Sabrina Gilchrist and Tawani Dewberry. Discover how to navigate the unique challenges of high-level leadership, especially in the nonprofit sector. Their first event is on July 23rd, 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss this chance to find support, share experiences, and learn techniques to overcome trauma in the C-suite. Register now and take the first step towards renewed mental health and wellness. The link for registration is in the show notes. Revitalize your brand and accelerate your impact with Eddy and Erica at Elevate One Consulting. Experts in organizational development, digital marketing, and much more. From leadership coaching to creating unforgettable digital experiences, we've got you covered. Visit elevateoneconsulting.com today. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Welcome back to the Unbroken Place, where it begins and ends with empathy. I'm your host, Eddy Paul Thomas, and this week we are sharing the final installment of our three-part conversation on trauma and grief in the C-suite. I'm joined in this conversation by Sabrina Gilchrist and Tawani Dewberry. If you haven't had the chance to listen to parts 1 and 2, I would definitely advise you to go over to eddypaulthomas.com/Unbroken Place or wherever you listen to your podcasts and listen in on episodes 10 and 11. Be sure to check the show notes for some important resources and ways to connect with both Tawani and Sabrina. And all right, let's go. So I'm looking at one thing, and anyone who knows me more than 5 minutes knows I love what sports do for us as people. It crosses all barriers, whether you're rich or poor, black or white, no matter what gender you are, there is a connector in sports that just transcends. And for me, one of the greatest lessons I learned was that you can still lose with your greatest performance. It doesn't matter if you're a track star. It doesn't matter if you're basketball, football, what have you. Your best efforts usually don't, and I guess let's make it more specific. Team efforts. If you're playing a team sport, your best efforts don't always reflect in a team win. And so when I'm thinking about the mental health of our top executives, the people who are charged with oftentimes the livelihood of others, especially during that, you mentioned the pandemic. I was consulting with ministries and nonprofits who were saying, we may have to drop 10, 15% of people. To what? There weren't jobs waiting for you. You know what I mean? Like, think about the type of pressure they had to deal with. And I'm just thinking about the less strenuous choices that aren't necessarily impacting people. How can organizations better support the mental health of their top executives?
Invest in it. And what I mean by that, I do think that and I know that this is easier said than done, but I am a huge advocate for companies, no matter what sector you're in, need to financially invest in ensuring that leadership can get the support that they need, whether that is investing in some form of health insurance,
Hmm.
for therapy and other services to be provided, employee assistance programs, setting those things up. Also, I am a huge proponent of organizations and companies thinking ahead about things like sabbatical and
Hmm.
extended leave for people. Unfortunately, that isn't something that is often prioritized, especially in the social sector when all the dollars, all the effort is supposedly needing to go towards feeding people or kids graduate, which it all matters. It's all important. Um, but if it's going to be sustainable work and with the retention of talent at the top, there's
Hmm.
got to be some investment in making sure that those types of benefits and skills are and services are provided. I also am a huge proponent of um, really trying to get an understanding of what type of environments and things, um, tools help people to work the best that they can. So I'll use myself as an example. Naturally, I am not a morning person, not a morning person. And naturally, my brain is always going. It's like a factory.
Yeah.
So I have since learned, in being in the seat, the less decisions I have to make early in the morning, the better I'm going to be. But that doesn't always translate to people understanding, no, I can't meet with you at 7 a.m. That's just not going to be, you're not going to get the best me.
Yeah.
So, for as much as we are able to kind of make accommodations, for people to do this work well, that's going to be a benefit to our overall mental health. When I was working for Tawani, she seemed to understand that I am not a morning person and I'm probably going to be late. And now I'm always going to be on time for the work that has to be done.
Yeah.
But in terms of getting to the office, I'm going to stroll in there 10, 15 minutes late. In traditional settings, I would be written up,
Hmm.
probably even let go or whatever.
Hmm.
Instead, Tawani, in her forward thinking of leadership and conscious leadership, said, Sabrina, I know you're going to be late, but I also know you're going to get the job done. Just
Hmm.
get in here, do what you got to do. I was eternally grateful for that. But I use
Yeah.
that tongue in cheek as an example of these are ways that we can um, improve our culture without diluting or sacrificing the mission or the work at hand. So, being a little flexible, being open and creative and innovative about
Yes.
letting people work in the ways that are best for them. There was
Hmm.
this huge push post pandemic
Hmm.
about going back to the office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 or whatever. I'm gonna tell you right now, my staff still has a flexible schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't foresee removing it because what I learned in being flexible is they
Mhm.
get more work done versus when we're all sitting in the office looking at each other.
Yep.
And quite frankly, I get more work done too. So, just being open to trying
Mhm.
some things out, keeping what works, you know, scrapping what doesn't, but those things matter and it helps people to approach their work in a more balanced and a healthier way.
Yeah. Yeah. You touched on it. It's one of the once I get into a deeper relationship with my clients, talking about their culture, and I don't beat anyone up. I
Mhm.
ask them, are you an AIS leader or are you a productivity leader? Like, what is your focus? And I often get the same question: what is AIS? Ass in seats. Do you want butts in seats right now, or do you want people who are productive? They often aren't the same thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, understanding your people, who you're bringing into this office, and what type of culture you're putting in front of them can help with some of those mental health issues that you see that are
Absolutely.
lingering from the stay in your house days of COVID.
Yes.
And so I agree with you 100% with having that flexibility and realizing that sometimes, what was successful 5 years ago doesn't necessarily fly right now.
Right. Right.
That's part of being an evolving or learning organization. That kind of leadership comes from the top.
Absolutely. And, we haven't touched on this, but you saying that reminds me, even when we look at the differences in the workforce
Hmm.
from generation to generation,
Yeah.
people give millennials a hard rap, and millennials and younger folks may give the baby boomers a hard rap. But,
Hmm.
we've got all these different sort of subcultures
Yeah.
in this workforce now, where we're trying to create new culture and the working environment.
Hmm.
There's some level of flexibility and openness that needs to happen in order for people to be at their best,
Hmm.
mentally, emotionally, psychologically, all of that, so that the work can still get done. So when I often think about work culture, I think, and this is thus says Sabrina, that's my other phrase, thus says
Okay.
Sabrina. To me, culture is fluid.
Mm.
Culture is not static. It may take a long time for culture to set, but it doesn't remain the same for all eternity.
Yeah.
There's going to be some evolution, some movement.
Yeah.
And either we can roll with it, or we can become so stagnant that we cease to evolve. And what science has taught us is that if an organism does not evolve, it dies.
Right. Right.
So it's evolution or extinction. Which is it going to be?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of well, go ahead, Tawana.
I was going to say, I think it's important, and now I'm dating myself. Because Sabrina talked about those elements of culture that go along with the generational nuances that we're seeing in the workforce now that have been tremendously impacted and shaped by the pandemic experience. Um, One thing that I encourage leaders to do is to understand, because you said it, AIS or productivity. What is it
Hmm.
you really want to get here? And
Hmm.
so, as you're navigating that and coming to grips with that, because I think being an AIS leader means you need to control your culture.
Ding, ding, ding. Yep.
Productivity means I want to lead you to this common goal that we have.
Hmm.
And that requires a certain amount of confidence in your leadership and a certain amount of confidence in your people to get it done.
Yeah.
And I think the leaders who will have a sustained level of success, as well as a higher level of mental wellness, are those who can lean into being a servant leader as opposed to needing to control.
Yeah.
Conversely, I think that cultures tend to fare better and employees are more receptive and more productive when
Yeah.
you are leading as opposed to trying to control. I
Yes.
learned experientially that it just doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it lends me back to another discussion that I have with leaders, um, about giving me 10% of their ego. And it's always a fun conversation, because everyone wants to, oh, I've got no ego. I just, did it. I don't believe that. Number one, if you are an executive, a director, a manager, a CEO, what have you, you have worked your tail off. Unless daddy's handed you the keys out of nowhere, you have worked your tail off, either at the organization or with your degrees, whatever it is that got you to that point. You've worked your tail off to have control, to have influence, to have power. And what I ask them is, if we're going to shift culture, if we're going to change things, give me 10% of your ego. And when I ask for that, I always come back with data, the studies, and I show them hey, if we make these tweaks, you're dealing with high turnover, and I can show you what those things are, but you're going to have to give me that 10% of ego so that we can get there. And I show them the numbers and what it costs them to replace employees that they're just bleeding out. It makes sense. And I go, oh, okay, gotcha. All right, well, we can try this. And come back 6 months later and we check the numbers and we see, oh, okay, some of the craziness has died down for your organization. Well, I would love to know from the two of you, kind of in that same vein, what impact does the mental health of leaders have on the overall health of the organization if they are not attended to well?
It will show up in the fiber of that organization, and it will impact um, the level of buy-in that
Mm-hmm.
employees have,
Yeah.
because in some way they will let you know you're showing up in a way that makes them either feel um, less confident in you, sometimes even resentful of you. So it behooves us to take care of ourselves,
Yeah.
because we bring all of who we are into the workplace, even when we think, oh, I mean, I leave that at home. No, you don't. It comes in with you, and it's our ego that makes us think we are that good at covering it, and
Mm-hmm.
it permeates the organization.
Yeah.
So the organization will be impacted by how we care for ourselves and how self-aware we are
Yeah.
of our mental state and what we need to do to be well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. 150% reiterate and echo what Tamani just said. The other, to add to that, I'm going to use an analogy and a story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I tell people that, generally speaking, in the workplace, you're going to have people who are thermometers and people who are barometers. A thermometer tells you the temperature. A barometer changes the temperature. People who are truly in leadership roles, and let me say this, I know we're talking about, executives and C-suite folks, but understand the person who sweeps the floor could very well be the leader in your organization or
Yeah.
in your workplace.
Yes.
So leadership as a concept and a posture, not a title, right?
Yeah.
Leaders in companies and in organizations are barometers.
Mm-hmm.
And so we change the temperature, of where we are. And there's a level of self-awareness and accountability that I believe we must have in that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and one way to sort of be accountable is check your thermometers. You got to have the truth tellers around you
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
will look at you and say, "Oh, you're not okay today." Just in case I'm not aware,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm showing up. And I'm gonna be real Sabrina in this moment. If I show up stank, I show up stank. The thermometer people
Mm-hmm.
will put a mirror in front of you or will let you know you stank.
Yeah.
And it's permeating in the environment, like we all smell you, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I think there's a level of accountability and to echo what you're saying about give me 10% of your ego,
Mm-hmm.
that requires the removal of some ego to even say, I, the energy in this space is in part because of me, and to be able to hear thermometer people say, this is how you are impacting us right now.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of humility,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
So here's my story. When I was a director and I had direct reports, we were at the performance review stage, and one of the things that I do is I do try to seek out feedback. So I said to my direct reports, this is not going to be a one-way performance review. I want you to tell me what I can do better
Mm,
as your director, blah blah blah. And I meant that very sincerely. It is true what they say, be careful what you ask for.
right.
Um one of my employees sat with me, and she was very brave, very courageous in this. She looked at me and she said, "Sabrina, friend, we don't know which Sabrina we're going to get from day to day. We don't know which Sabrina is going to show up. Some days you show up and everything is butterflies and hummingbirds, and we are all singing kumbaya, and you are your best hippie self.
Mhm.
Other days you are sharp, short fuse, irritable, and we don't know. We never know from day to day who you're going to be."
Hmm.
Now, the reality of that is, who wants to work for somebody like that? And who can feel A, supported, but also B, comfortable coming in and doing their work when you don't know which boss is going to show up?
Right.
Right. And so at that was the truly aha, eye-opening moment for me to say I am absolutely responsible for the energy and the yeah, the temperature that I
Yeah.
create in this workplace. And I, because I care about people, I don't want anybody to come in and work under that kind of duress.
Yeah.
So ever since then, to talk about, taking care of ourselves and being self-aware and actually doing something to take care of ourselves. If I wake up or I'm having a day where I'm stank, I look at my folks, my leaders in my workplace, and I say, you know what, y'all, I'm stank today. I need to work remotely
Yeah.
because I don't need to put this in the environment.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. That is myself and other care, because all kinds of things can contribute to my stankness, to be honest. And it has nothing to do most of the time with any of them, but
Yeah.
I know I'm stank and I don't need to get this on anybody else.
Hmm. Yeah. That's see. That's beautiful. The I was curious when you said that you wanted this to be a two-way thing. If you were going to get honest answers. Like I was on the edge of my seat, like literally, I was on the edge, like, okay, is she gonna get? Yep, and you got the honest answer. The reality is that when I hear directors say that, generally speaking, managers, directors, they don't get truthful answers.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, and it's more about the culture in the organization. Those conversations, how they go.
Yeah.
But I'm going to reveal one of my little tricks in the bag. So hopefully people etch a sketch their brains after they hear it. But one of my tricks that I do with one of, several CEOs, C suites, doesn't matter who it is. If you're running an organization, you ask me to come in. One of the things I do is ask to take a walk around the perimeter, the office, the different parts of the office. And I watch the energy in those rooms
Mm-hmm.
when said person walks through with me, because I know people aren't responding to me. I'm nobody. I haven't worked there. I'm not. I may be a new hire, maybe, but they're paying attention to when the CEO, the CFO, the COO is walking through that door. And do they immediately, jump up like, oh my gosh, and are they behaving differently when that person walks through the door, or are they themselves? Does the COO, CEO, whoever know the names of these people as we walk through? Does it automatically get quiet when they walk through?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to be said for exactly what you said, in terms of what type of energy you bring in and what type of culture exists beyond what you think exists in your building. So I loved, your honesty and the stankin stankness that you brought to the table, because it's true, it's real, and I love the idea that you're that self-aware that you can say, you know what, this needs to be a home day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that you have a culture that not only respects it but expects that every once in a while you're going to be working from home.
Hmm.
Um,
and and I will just kind of also allude to, and I also give that to my team,
mhm.
that there are times when they come in and it's obvious they're not okay.
Yeah,
And I will say, you know what, work from home today. It's okay. Go take care of yourself. Now,
yeah,
fortunately, we are in I have an organization and we do a work that I can afford to do that. You know, I do understand that there are some companies where you got
yeah,
to be where you are.
yeah,
But again, going back to trying to be innovative with what I can be innovative with, so that my employees and I can be as well as we possibly can be. Here's the other piece to it though, and again, this goes back to accountability. When I have my stank days, I have to sit and really assess, Sabrina, how are you taking care of yourself?
yeah,
I can't have a month's worth of stanky days
yeah, yeah.
and not go into work. You know, I
Mm,
so if I'm feeling that way, then that is an indication that there's something that I need to do to take care of myself.
yeah,
Maybe it's a matter of I haven't had fun lately. Let me go play some video games. Maybe it's a matter of I haven't had good nutrition lately. Instead, I've been living off of all the fast food. Let me go eat some better food. You know,
yeah,
whatever it is, there's got to be a level of accountability to fix it. So I can't just walk around stank. I got to do what I need to do to wash it up.
yeah, yeah,
And I'm glad you said that, Sabrina, because the thing I was thinking about as you were talking is, you know, you want to have those reciprocal environments and relationships, but there is an element of leadership that requires you to be an example.
yep,
And your example of wellness and taking care of yourself is very much about self awareness for you, but it also is about you displaying for them that you want that to be a part of the culture for
yeah,
everyone. So, I mean, we often, my staff, when I walk in, they're like, hey, what'd you work out? What'd you do when you worked out this morning? You know, it's kind of like the water cooler. I'm like, hey, it was leg day. And I have another staff person who started working out. He's like, yeah, I squatted 250 today. But it's those things where, as an example of, I like to share what I'm reading with some of my staffers,
hmm,
but
yeah,
those things that are reprieves from the everyday work environment, it's an example of you are more than your occupation. You're more than your stank day. That's a moment. But
yeah,
being the
yeah,
example of what it means to take care of yourself and live the balanced life is, to me, a priority of leadership.
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I wonder, as a coach, Tamani, if you can speak to the stigma around mental health in the C-suite.
Absolutely. The stigma and this idea that because you have reached a certain level or pinnacle in your career exempts you from the everyday challenges and anxieties of life
Mm,
is pervasive. And that somehow you have some magic potion that exempts you from those effects makes it such that a lot of times leaders just deal with it and often will not seek a therapist because they feel like somehow it's going to be a ding against their professional reputation or something of that nature. But I think we've got to destigmatize that to make sure that our leaders are able to bring their best selves into this environment. We've got
hmm,
some phenomenal individuals who have dedicated themselves to the work of our communities. And the last thing we want to do is see or continue to see the mass exodus that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years of very competent and dedicated leaders leaving the sector because it's taking such a toll on their mental and emotional well-being.
yeah,
It's happening, and I think it is squarely because of the stigma associated with not being invincible in
yeah,
those ways.
yeah. It's so interesting. Um, for me, growing up, I loved superheroes. I loved all of them. I've got comic books for days. If I were to pan this camera around, you'd see all my little collectible action figures from way back in the day. The one thing that I loved about what Marvel has done with their superheroes is that they've allowed you to see who the person was once the armor came off. And they were allowed to be human. They were allowed to be just deeply flawed. And it didn't matter what ethnicity, race, what have you, all of them have deep flaws, but they throw that suit of armor on and they go out when the world needs them. And I feel like a lot of our C-suite are taking on the world. And I'm going to speak specifically to my knowledge, and that is of black men and women of color. And I know that the burden is much heavier for black women, but I've also, working in the spaces that I've worked, I've seen what happens to Native American women, Asian women, what have you. I know that there are different things that women and black men have to deal with,
Yes.
that are just different in the workplace. And I would love to know from both of you, what are some proactive steps that leaders can take to prioritize their mental health?
Go ahead. You got
Go
it.
ahead.
Okay. I think one of the first things is find your tribe. And what I mean by that is find your group, your personal board of directors, your
Mm,
personal support team, um, so that you have a place where you can take off the cape.
yeah.
We have to have a space where we can just be.
Hmm.
And for some of us, that might be our families, it might be our spouses or whatever, might be our best friends. It might, but the point is, we've got to be intentional about finding that safe space. And what I tell people is, and if you can't find it, create it.
Hmm.
And that's where, to me, convening people is very important, because everybody needs a place where they can just breathe.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the first things that we have to do. The next thing is be honest. This is where I believe conversation is so important. So when we find the safe space, or when we create the safe space, let's have authentic conversation about, here's what I'm experiencing, here's what I'm feeling. And I do think we have to learn how to also be support for other people. And so a lot of times what I ask when folks are talking to me is, okay, what do you need from me in this moment? How can I best support you right now? Because not everybody wants answers or advice. Sometimes they just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And sometimes they want answers and advice. And I'm, taking a posture of listening, because that's what I do as a therapist. And they have to say, no, 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 I want to know what you think.
Yeah.
So being able to, I'm going to use love language
Mhm.
here, being able to love people in the ways that they need to be loved,
Right.
and not just in the ways that are most comfortable for me to love,
Hmm.
is very important. And then I believe we've got to change the narrative and change the system. And one of the ways we do that is to tell our stories,
Yeah.
is to show, the scar, right? I may
Hmm.
not be comfortable showing you my wound, but if I know that I've had support, and I'm working on it, I can at least show you my scar, so
Hmm.
you know that this hit me, something hit me, but I've overcome. So I think those things are definitely important, and then that's how we begin to prioritize our well-being, making the time for, I'm gonna say this, go to your doctor. Take time off of work to do your doctor's appointments. When people are like, well, I have this appointment, but I got this going on at work, go take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Because as Tawani was mentioning, the mental health and the emotional health, those challenges that are creating or continuing this mass exodus, right? There's also the physical health that people are losing as a result of these things. Go take care of yourself. That's a great start. Get your preventive, just,
Hmm.
that's a great start.
Yeah.
And also make time to be with people who you love and who bring the best out of you.
Yeah.
um, Make those things a priority, because here's what I'll say. I'm going to quote my mom. May she continue to rest in peace. My mom used to say, um, in these jobs, they will work you to death, watch you kill over, step over you. They might gather and cry in your honor and eat some chicken, but the very next day they're going to find the next
Find
person,
somebody. Yep. Yep.
right? And
Mhm.
so there's got to be an element of remembering that while this work is so important, and yes, we give a piece of ourselves to it, at the end of the day, this is also still a job.
Yeah.
And if you are not going to take care of yourself, that means you won't be here to do the work.
Hmm.
And they will find somebody else.
Yeah.
So you might as well take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think the term that I use typically with folks is you've got to have a holistic approach to self care. And as Sabrina mentioned, taking the time to do those things that keep you physically well, that feed you emotionally and mentally. And I'm going to throw the thing in here that I think is core to what keeps me moving. That is, I don't know what it looks like for everyone else, but you've got to figure out how to feed yourself,
Yeah.
how to nourish your spirit
Yeah.
in all of this. Because again, you don't get a badge of honor for dying at your desk, um,
No.
and being a martyr for the job. Your responsibility, I think, again, as a leadership priority, is to care for those elements of yourself in a holistic way so that you are an example of the culture you want to build with those that you are leading. So
Yeah.
that's my take on it from the leadership perspective. And I think we once we get to a point where we make this a prevalent message that it is okay not to always be the superhero with the cape,
Hmm.
but that there is an element of humanity that comes with it. I think it benefits everyone
Yeah.
Yeah.
for that to be.
Yeah. And that's why conversations like these are so important. There's a reason why this is called the unbroken place. We're trying to unlearn those things that were so harmful for us, and find new ways to communicate, to exist, to honor one another and connect. And so um, I know that there will be a lot of people who take a lot from this conversation that we've had. And I guess what I want to do is ask, for those out there who can't ask right now, where can they follow your work? Where can they see the next Sabrina conversation, or speech, or whatever it is? How can they follow you, Sabrina?
Folks can follow me on Instagram at the Sabrina Nicole, and Nicole is spelled Nichole. They
Hmm.
can also follow me on my YouTube channel, which is Sabrina Nicole LLC, or they
Okay,
can go to my website, which is thesabrinanichole.com.
outstanding. And you're an author as well.
I
So is there
am.
what's the book that they can pick up?
The book that they can pick up, they can order it from Amazon if they like, is called Child Get Up: Living with Mental Illness and Faith.
Outstanding, outstanding. And Tuani, how can people follow you as well?
They can follow me on Instagram. My handle is at Tawani. I use my first name because nobody else has. It's simply Tawani, or they can find me at Reconciliation Counseling and Consulting on Facebook. I'm also visible on LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. And I'll make sure that I put those handles in the show notes for everyone as well. So,
All
well,
right.
thank you so much for jumping in with us today at the Unbroken Place. This was spectacular. And I can't wait. We've got plenty more to talk about, but we'll do that a different time. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. It's been
Thank you.
great.
The Unbroken Place podcast is presented by Elevate One Consulting. The show was produced by Say Something Studios. Learn more about both of these in the show notes. The show's music is performed by Little Glass Men and Captive Portal. We want to thank you for being a part of the Unbroken Place community. Look for an ongoing conversation on Instagram and Facebook at the handle @UnbrokenPlace. You can also find some helpful resources at eddypaulthomas.com. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter called OK on Second Thought on LinkedIn. Until next time, one love.
In a world where thriving teams, engaged managers, and ethical leaders are the backbone of successful business, how do entrepreneurs set the stage for human flourishing while scaling up? The answer is ongoing effort, leadership, and intentional communication. At Elevate One Consulting, Dr. Erica Garcia Thomas and Eddy Paul Thomas are helping to turn the tide. With a blend of evidence-based practices, interactive teaching, and dynamic public speaking, they're not just consultants, but revolutionaries in improving company health, growth results, and employee engagement. Specializing in revitalizing brands, coaching leaders, and accelerating projects, Elevate One Consulting offers a comprehensive suite of business services designed to enhance team leadership and customer experience. Whether advising executives, guiding digital marketing strategies, or transforming organizational culture, they're here to elevate your business to the next level. Don't settle for a business that survives. Ensure that it thrives. Visit www.elevateoneconsulting.com. ELEVATE 1consulting.com today and take the first step towards creating an environment where everyone flourishes. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate.
Say Something Studios.